vibration a bit. Brightness, contrast a little bit. Very red on it. Bring back the saturation a little bit. It's on my face. It's so damn red. That's very funny. What do we got there? Zoom pan. Backlight compensation on. No, off. And let's go live. Hi. Oh, hey everybody. Sorry. Just making adjustments to the camera here because I'm sitting inside today. And it's been, I was up I was up in the mountains earlier. I went up and took a hike in the mountains for about an hour and a half. And now I'm all beet red. So here we are, sitting by the window in a small room. I put up a little fountain and some candles behind me to add a little bit of atmosphere. And welcome everyone to Satsang. My favorite day of the week, because this is what I feel. This is why I'm here. I do other things with EFT and various kinds of programs and the like, but this is why I'm here. This is my reason for being, is to simply be here to let answers to questions come through this particular body mind. So I welcome all questions. I welcome all whatever's on your heart and mind, especially these days. And I prefer freedom questions, but I know these days there's a lot of troubling things on a lot of people's hearts about so many different things. I've never seen such confluence of difficult events and people in my 68 years here on the planet. And I know that even our religions have really failed in delivering. They become oppressive. Instead of delivering comfort and wisdom, they become very oppressive instead. Just check the volumes here, make sure everything is okay. Push the gain a little bit. So it should be okay now. I'm pressing the meters to the top. So Mary, hello in Niagara Falls, Rosario in Spain, John in Ireland, Anand Nikhil from Germany, hello, or is it Nikhil? Anand Nikhil. Oh, Nikhil is the name, I think, right? And Anand for Ananda. Ivan in Bulgaria, David and Elaine, hello everyone, dear friends, Southeast England. Liza says hi, and hey, Anne made it on time today, waiting for you. Yay. Dave Rose in Massachusetts. Ava. So wonderful to be here in Satsang. So great to have you, Ava. Sventa Ava. Daryl, hello to Daryl. Wildcat Drums. Hey, man. Hey, Dale, how are you? Oh, I owe you an answer, don't I? Apologies, dear friend. Oh, my. Ursula, hello from Madeira Island, Portugal. Hello. Dale, good afternoon in Massachusetts. Mary, so good to see you and hear you beautifully. Hopefully it'll keep up. It was so windy outside that I decided that I needed to do this inside. It was taking away from the substance of why we're here. Cheryl in Pennsylvania. You said the volume was low, and I guess it's okay now. So, as we begin to plunge into the spirit of satsang, I was really moved as I was sitting up in the mountains. I found a nice place to be. I brought my camera with, thinking I would do some kind of video or something, but I just got so mesmerized and enchanted by the mountain, by the scene, by the trees that were around me. by the so many forms of life at different stages of life. And even the dead bush and the dead tree, the branches that had fallen down, weren't really dead. That energy was just kind of decomposing back into the earth, where it was going to take another form as a life again. And I was just, as I sat there, just taking it in, just feeling the energy of this part of the world and this particular little corner that I happened to be sitting in. I was struck by the fact that while there was so much life around me, the trees, the bushes, there was some wildlife, some critters. I heard a coyote in the distance. So much life around me, and none of it had any ego. It was pure being. It made me realize that that really is us, that we are that too. But because of our unique position we have in the wonder of all of this, the sense of being a separate self emerged. And it had to. It's part of it's the part of it. It's kind of part of the process by which this self-awareness can emerge. Imagine there being a universe as spectacular and wondrous as this, and no one there to see it. No one there to know it, to ponder the mystery of it, to just sit in awe of the sheer wondrous beauty of all of this, to recognize beauty as beauty. It's the great gift. We are the consciousness of everything. We're the self-awareness of the self. It doesn't mean that there's two of us, but that the self, the truth of who you are, appreciates itself in form. That's what you are. The human life is the ultimate infinite life in love with itself, appreciating itself, in awe of the wondrousness of its own beauty. That's your human life. And simultaneously, you are that self, witnessing itself. Just see if for a moment you can simply set everything aside, all the ideas about yourself, your ambitions, your past, stuff that's happened to you, good and bad, things you want to have happen. All the ideas you hold about yourself, just put that to the side and just feel for a moment the sense, that unmistakable sense of your own being. Just being. Now I know for the mind and for most people that's nice, but yeah, I've got to get on with business. But we're leaving that outside for right now. We're just kind of setting it aside on the shelf and get it later. To just allow ourselves a moment, a sacred moment, to be just present with the sense of being, without having anything to do, and without being anybody in particular. Just experiencing existence. Sensations are still there, they're still moving. Maybe you can hear the wind blowing outside my window. You can hear my voice going. You can feel the emotions, you can feel the energy of the body. It's okay. We're just not engaging with it for a moment, to just Notice this subtle sense that gets overlooked all the time. And that is, you just are. Before any doing can happen, you first have to be. We rarely just stop for a second to savor the wonder of just being. And notice that sense of being, it doesn't really have an identity. It's not someone in particular. It doesn't have a concrete form, gender, age. It's just being. You just are. And just try to stay with that experience of just being. Because your mind will try to make something out of it, because that's what minds do. Minds are object makers. Try to give it definition and name and content and story, narration, history. We put all of that aside because it's all secondary. Just experience yourself as you are. Just being. Notice that there's nothing missing there. There's nothing there in particular. There's just being. It doesn't feel incomplete, does it? It isn't looking for something. Very quiet, very still. This is you without anything extra added. This is you without even a thought of you. A formless you. Being without concrete identification. You just are. The same sense of being is alive in the trees. The birds, the hummingbirds that surround me in the morning. The magpie. The lilac bush. Same sense of being. Native Americans called it the Great Spirit. And I think that's a beautiful name for it. But its street name is myself, me. I don't think you need to hold on to this. Some thought's going to come, well, this is great, how do I hold on to this? You don't need to hold on to yourself. This is who you are. Nothing needs to be held. What they call awakening is simply realizing that this is what you are and not what you thought you were. That's the long and short of it. That's the big the big momentous enlightenment. It's like, oh, I'm not that. I'm this. This is the place I'm looking from all the time. So now, as always, the floor is open to any kind of questions and anything you guys want to explore in more detail. Sue, hi Sue in South Africa. Leanne, dear Leanne, in Moolalaba, Australia. What a great name. Wildcat, it's okay. Hope you're good. Happy to be here. Happy to have you, man. And Laura in Bristol, England. Laird, AGP. Sorry, I've been out for a while. Started following again. I've really benefited tremendously from your pointings. Very glad. Very glad. Yeah, we tried to get a meetup going in Chicago, but just couldn't make it happen. Nazrin, hello, in Ireland. Dale Wiggins. Hello, Dale. Any thoughts or tricks to plant the seed to raise awareness of the truth of oneness? Even though I believe it's spreading rapidly, I feel the word needs an extra jumpstart these days. Yes, I definitely agree, and Grace is providing it. The best way to plant that seed is to be that oneness. To increasingly take it out of the realm of the abstract and into the realm of the concrete. And the concrete, of course, is yourself. It starts by seeing that oneness is an illusion. Separateness is an illusion. It is a perceptual distortion. There's no more a boundary between you and me than there is a line between Mexico and the United States, or between England and Scotland, or between France and Germany. There's no line there. It's completely made up. There are no borders, boundaries. They're completely conceptual. And so the sense of a separation is conceptual, but has been internalized to the point where it's believed, so we feel separate. Recognizing that oneness, it has to go universally. You're not just one with Mother Teresa and Gandhi. You're also one with Donald Trump and whoever the guy in England is, Boris Johnson. Yeah. We have to accept our oneness with those who'd rather not be one with, and recognize that is simply veiling the oneness, the original innocence of all beings. That this, I can take the worst character in the world, the worst character who's ever existed. We can go into a little meditation like we just did, and they will come to exactly the same place you did. The difference in behavior is the conditioning, and whether or not somebody has had the experience of grace and hearing and recognizing the Dharma, the true teaching. Otherwise, they are trapped in the suffering of ignorance, delusion, and greed. And those are the three characteristics that typify our modern world and the majority of our leaders. Wall Street, large corporations, ignorance. They don't have no idea who they are. Right? They don't know how anything works. They don't know what conditioning is. They don't know what life is about. They are completely ignorant of the beauty around them. Completely absorbed in what? Their delusion. Their delusion is who they think they are. This idea of somebody who's very important and special. this never-ending onslaught of egoic self-congratulation. It's delusional. And nothing but suffering will break through it. And the third characteristic, the third poison in Buddhism, it's referred to as the three poisons, is greed. And greed is simply the insatiable desire for more. On the most subtle level, greed touches all of us. Because the way Buddha defined greed was not just the overt avarice and insidious display that we see, like, the Kardashians and, lifestyles of the rich and boring. Anytime there is a desire arises and we seek the fulfillment of that desire externally, anytime we put our happiness out there, external to ourselves, that's greed. That's how Buddha used that term. Anytime we look to the external for what is only in the internal, right? That is the desire for something that doesn't exist. That's why it's interminable suffering. Greed can never be satisfied. It's a hungry ghost. And you can see it. They want more, they want more, they want more, and more. And to the point where they want to wipe out parts of the population. They consider most of us expendable. That's what happens when greed is out of control and gets power. Those are the three poisons. So if we break all of those down, and we are constantly engaged in the eradication of our own ignorance, delusion, and greed, then we are the living oneness. You're the bodhisattva at that point. You're the living light. You're the door that everyone will eventually have to walk through. Because eventually suffering catches up. It does. It can't be insulated from forever. Doesn't matter how much you accumulate. That the only reason they want to accumulate more is because that gnawing feeling is not yet satisfied. But they're so good at just one success after another, and willing to do anything to get it, that it's constantly suppressing that voice. But eventually that voice will no longer be able to be thwarted. And it'll become the burning bush inside one, until finally the attention gets turned inward, where it has to eventually go. You turning inward now, being that oneness, becomes the light by which, at some point, somebody decides to turn for whatever reason, and they'll find you waiting for them, ready to welcome them with open arms, like the prodigal father. Never talked to him about it before. Okay, I'm losing everything. The jump starts from Dale. I'm trying to pick up Dale because he had a few other things in here. John in Scotland. Hi, John. Alessandria, good to have you. Dale said again, I never talked to him about it before, but my nephew turned 21 last week and told me he's had the insight that there is one universal consciousness. Sorry, my statement got sent early while in the meditation. It's okay. It's happening all the time. I've seen a couple of young kids of my friends. My own granddaughter is quite precocious. I haven't seen these things coming out of her quite yet, but there's a different energy about children now that is growing. There's kids that are like, they're like sounding like little Buddhas and the like. I remember as a child having similar kinds of insights. I remember pondering, 4 or 5 years old, trying to figure out what it's like to not exist, right? To die, just nothing. And it was just perplexing because no matter what I did, I always found me. There was always something it just couldn't compute. Over time, you mature, conditioning gets more, gets more concrete, and you got to interact with the world, and there's plenty of distractions. The hormones kick in, and all that sort of thing. That kind of stuff can kind of taper off. But I'm also experiencing more often younger people, teenagers, early 20s, and the like, where it's genuine. There's something is genuinely waking up, and I think it's simply because the world is no longer offering them anything. There's lots of distractions, but no substance. And anybody who's got any kind of inherent sense of substance or beauty is just going to be just this bad taste in their mouth. It's just dissatisfying. So it's beautiful to see that, and insight. There's one universal consciousness. He's absolutely right. There is. Now, the mission is to find that you are that one universal consciousness. Because you'll notice how people talk about it as if it's out there somewhere. But if it's one universal consciousness, it's you. You are that one universal consciousness. Not you as Dale or your nephew or GP. Right? That's the form that the one universal consciousness is shining through. But that place we just visited, where there's just that sense of being, that's it. You're that. And that is the one universal consciousness. And it's not in the body. So the key is, the point of meditation is to realize that you are that. Because we think of oneness as, I mean, you probably say the one you're, oh yes, and we imagine it is out there somewhere. Well, if there's not one universal consciousness, then it's got to be here, right? One's one, right? It's not the one universal consciousness and me looking at it. Obviously, it's the one universal consciousness that's looking right now, because it's one. So either there's one or there's many. And if you just look for a little bit, you find, my God, there's only one, and I'm it. That's the secret sauce. That's when it goes from being a nice metaphysical or non-dual idea to the reality of my being. I am that. That's the insight. It's not something, it's me. That's the true I. David. Hey David. Hi G. Is the concept of resistance to inner work real or helpful, do you think? Or is another part of the seeker berating itself for not being diligent enough in its seeking? Gratitude and love. It's both. Resistance comes up, right? And all resistance is, there's nobody resisting, okay? It's just the nature of form. Look around. Every form in the universe has a certain power of sustaining itself. It wants to stay the form. If it doesn't, forms just keep falling apart, right? There has to be some kind of an element of some degree of continuity for a form to take a form, for it to last long enough that it would be useful, right? I mean, if this body didn't maintain a form, right? If it was constantly mutating, right, into all what it could, right? Because just a bunch of energy could be anything, and tomorrow it's a bush, the next day it's an old Buick, right? Right? So form has a tendency to kind of change more slowly over time to perpetuate the form. Otherwise, you wouldn't have one. You wouldn't, right? Now, you're not that form. That's what's key to see. The awakening is to realize I'm not the form. I'm the formless, changeless consciousness that's aware of it. Right? Now, realizing that, as that thought that I am not this resistance, I am not this form, is dawning, part of what that form is in the human being is the pattern of thought that says, I am this body. I am this form. And that thought pattern wants to sustain itself. And so there's a momentum there. Remember, the entire nervous system has organized around that thought, that fundamental belief. I am separate. I am the body. The body is in the world. So now there's a body and a world and me and all of that sort of thing, right? So it's perfectly natural. It's like a gyroscope. If you knock it over, it wants to stand back up. Or those little punching bags for kids. It's kind of round, and boop, and shoop, boop, and it comes back up again. It wants to do that. It's seeking that stable state, and so that's what which consciousness feels as resistance, as if something's pushing back. Well, there's nothing there. What it is you are shifting a pattern that's headed in a particular direction and it has momentum. And so you're kind of tapping on the side, trying to redirect it. And of course, it wants to stay headed in that direction. So it's not there's somebody resisting or there's a resistor. This is simply the habit pattern to the energy of the mind and nothing more. Now, some people, not realizing that's what it is, right, will now turn that resistance, immediately identify, I'm resistant, I've got to get rid of this resistance, how can I overcome resistance? And of course resistance now has them by the throat, right? It's got you on a stick, because now you're engaged. I mean, you're basically fighting with a puppet, right? There's nobody there, and you're trying to duke it out. I told this story when somebody even told me what the show was about. It was a TV show, and it was a Mary Tyler Moore show, and it was set in a newsroom, and they had the head of the news department. She was a reporter, and then there was Susan, who I don't know, she did the cooking show or something, but she got demoted and she ended up having to do this puppet show. And I guess the puppet show was a kid show, and the guy who was the guy working the puppet was a real snot. He was a real smart ass, and he was always making fun of people. Really nice with the kids on TV, and he was always making fun of people. So they're all standing around there talking, and the guy's not there. It's just the puppet, and he's talking to, the boss, right? And he's just insulting the hell out of him, right? Until finally, the boss gets so angry, he grabs it, starts choking it like this, and Mary says, Lou? Lou? You see what you're doing? He's choking a puppet, right? I mean, that's what we try to do. There's nobody there, right? You're choking a puppet, right? You're not going to get very far. So this happens. Something comes up. People get into spirituality, and spirituality becomes religion, right? That is, it's a code of conduct, it's a code of ethics, you follow these things. Not that that's bad. Yes, obviously I'd rather have people following, humane moral codes than immoral codes, but they're just codes. They're adjustments to behavior. Spirituality is about the discovery of who you really are, right? It's not about just altering the behavior. So then they think, okay, I'm going to be really good. And then when you're not, when something comes up and you're angry, you go, ooh, and you beat yourself up, or resistance comes up because you simply don't understand really what's happening. So I think I answered your question there, Dave. Yes, and it's very, very easy when that stuff happens to blame yourself. That I'm not really very spiritual. I'm not doing this right. I'm not good enough. Blah, 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 blah. Which is really the same thing. It's the same resistance. It's the same energy. It's the same false sense of self. Now it's trying to turn itself into a spiritual person, and that's failing miserably. So the age-old habit of I'm not acceptable as I am, which is the fundamental belief, I'm simply not good enough, right, is still alive and well. It needs to be challenged on that level. You are the seer, not the seen. So whatever comes up, is simply the flow of energy in life. And it always flows in certain patterns. Right? That's all you ever see are patterns. Thought patterns are no different. Emotional patterns are no different. Sense patterns are no different. And those patterns taken together are what we call me. And that's not you. It's a pattern of conditioning that you have mistakenly identified with. Yeah. Who you are is the formless, unconditioned self. And there's only one of them. And you're it. Anja says hello from Germany. Hi, Anja. Lamont, what's up, GP? St. Louis, Missouri. Hey, Lamont, good to have you. Jay is back. Hey, Jay. Noel, greetings from the Netherlands. Hello. Laird says, I've always loved watching you, but recently your videos are opening the last bolt in me. Yay! We need a little WD-40, but we'll get it open. John Sheehan, IGP, can you explain the sentence that the I thought is the mother of the world? Thanks. I love kombucha. Well, thousands of times a day, you use the word I. Correct? I is your only point of reference. You can't hop into somebody else's skin and have their point of reference. Even if you could, all you'd get is their perspective in the moment. There's just no way in the world you could have experienced their entire life that has built up the memories and interpretations and patterns and perceptions, right? So in a very real sense, the I and the world are the same. Your perception of the world is completely based on I. I is regarded as first person, right? Without I, there's no you, there's no it, there's no he or she, there's no them, there's no we or us. All of the other persons, right, are relative to I, which means that either directly or indirectly, every thought you have, every word you say is I. So this I is the perspective, and it is perspective that gives rise to the world. What the world is depends on who's looking at it. Now we assume that there is out there, oops, I didn't drop my thing here. Yeah. We assume that there is out there this objective reality called a world. Well, if there is, nobody's ever seen it. The only thing you've ever seen is your own perceptions. The truth of the matter is there is no world out there. There is only perception. Recognizing that is what takes you, from samsara to nirvana. Samsara is the belief that the world exists independently of my perception of it. Nirvana is the realization that it only exists as an image in consciousness. And the world and perception are one. And since the soul of all perception is I, the I is the mother of the world. Nothing can be seen except from a point of view, right? Imagine this cup, this glass of water here, right? Maybe, actually the kombucha is better because it's got some color to it. Now, I'm looking at it from this side, right? It's a sponsor. It's a sponsor. It's really, really good sponsorship now. No sponsors. Still have to ask for donations. But now look, you're looking at it from this direction, but I don't see that, do I? I can't see that. I can on the screen, but I'm looking at, this is what I see. Somebody else will see it from here, somebody else from here, somebody else from here, somebody else from here. Now imagine looking at, trying to look at this from two sides at the same time. What would you see? Be muddled. Now imagine looking at it from all perspectives simultaneously. There'd be nothing there. In order for a universe to appear, consciousness must contract perception to a single point. Otherwise, it's the infinite wholeness of pure potential, and no thing exists. The thing can only exist when a point of perception emerges. That point of perception is what you call your human life. What I call is the eye of consciousness, or the mother of the world. That eye, at the point of perception, in that moment, the pure, infinite potential, formless potential, takes form. Something comes out of the background, and there's a universe. It's not just the world, it's the universe. Because notice, none of this exists independent from everything else. It's one stupendous whole. The universe, the tree outside my window, or the lamp behind me, is not separate from the universe. It is the universe, and it couldn't have existed without the whole rest of the universe. And the whole rest of the universe would have been incomplete without it. That's why it's here. Are you grasping this? The problem is, the reason that it seems weird is because we think of the world as being something objective that exists independently. It's out there, and then somehow we came on the scene and we're looking at it. That it's always been here, and we've come and go. I mean, that's the idea of reincarnation too, right? The earth is the same, and I was born here, and I'm born 100 years later, or maybe 500 years earlier. But this thing here is supposed to be this objective thing that exists, and I get born in and out of it. Well, the reality is I'm what exists, I'm what never changes, and worlds appear and disappear to me. What makes a world disappear and appear to me? Just the focus of attention, period. And you can demonstrate that on a smaller scale in your own life. Pay attention to something for a while, and little by little, it'll become bigger in your attention, and everything else will disappear. Like those, it's like those pictures that were very popular for a while, where there was very complicated patterns. You had to stare at them for a while, and eventually your mind would bring an image into existence, right? That's what to exist means, to stand out from the background. You don't see it at first, and then little by little it begins to stand out to you, right? Well, it was there the whole time? No, it wasn't. It was created in the moment. The earth is being created in this moment by your perceptions. So when you and I are talking about the world, we're talking about two different worlds. We're not talking about the same world. Yes, we are in essence the same, and so when you get down into the essential beingness that we all are, we find there's the commonality, but it's not the world that is the commonality. It's our being that is common. And we are the same being experiencing innumerable worlds simultaneously. The mind cannot grasp this, so don't even bother trying. But I think you're getting the point here. So the perception is the I, right? The I self and the I seeing are the same. In English, it's interesting that they have the same sound. They don't in other languages, but in English they do. And so, so it's the eyes through which you are seeing, but the eyes through which you are seeing are literally creating what is seen. It is not seeing something that pre-existed. Perception and and existence are one. The world is perception. So the I is the mother of the world. The I known is what we call the mind. The I, in its formless reality, is the self. And, thank you. I think it was, is that David? Yeah. Hey, David. Thank you for that, David. Really helped, G. I think it's a shame that young people get no education on emotional intelligence. Easy Q. If you were president, how would you change the educational system? No pressure. Hello. I would throw it out in its entirety, the entire education system of the West, and I'd see the education system follows our value system, and the idea of experiencing things as a unified whole would change the entire character of all of it. The education of the intellect is really quite secondary, but that's all the emphasis is on. But now it's not even on the intellect. That's only for the elite. They actually get taught how to think, but never outside their own box either. We're simply down here. We're only taught to consume. We're not. Thank God that a lot of us escaped that. Escaped that. So, yeah, I would gut it. I would just completely gut it. It's a waste of time. Classrooms, the regimentation of it. It's so industrial age. That's what it was for. Keep the kids busy where the parents were busy slaving away at slave wages in factories. The educational system is a joke. It has nothing to do with education or anything to truly develop the character and true intellect of an individual. It once liberated, once we've come to understand and liberate ourselves from the dependency on the environment and the residue of 12,000 years of agriculture and dependency on the environment that has led to greed and property being the sign of prestige. Once we're liberated in that and we begin to form a completely new relationship with the earth and the environment, the education will follow. Innovation, creativity will be spotted and encouraged. Everybody's gifts will be recognized. And the education will then be creating the environment in which every individual has the potential and access to what they need to fully realize their full potential, which then of course gets turned right back around to feed the whole. And humanity just takes off in terms of what its potential to do. We'll be walking through the stars in no time. Let's see. Laird, I've been suffering from this quarantine and you appeared at the right time to unlock my remaining doors. Good. Suffering, as much as it sucks, is one of the primary doorways to is the primary doorway to awakening. There's a lot of people during this quarantine that have suffered a lot simply because they've never known how to be with themselves. They don't have the same level of distraction available to them. For many people, the number one level of distraction is buy stuff, shop, right? Which is great. It is great for the economy, kind of. It's actually bad for the economy because it makes us dependent upon artificial distractions. That's not a substantial economy and is not sustainable, as has been made evident. But any time in our lives, whether it be this or any other time, life just has this way of taking away from us the things that we have been leaning on that aren't really supporting us. The things that aren't true support. The only true support is truth. Knowing who you are is the only true support there is. Everything else is temporary, and then we lean on it too long, it breaks. It's the same with every institution, every system, whether economic or political. They're all flawed, they're all temporary, and they're never made to endure. They can't, because life and consciousness is developing, and therefore it will have to always create new systems, but when it does, the old ones are left behind, and when one has identified with a particular system, they don't want to let it go. And so you suffer. Right? So when things get taken away, I finally learned the lesson, a while ago, that when things get taken away, that's a good thing. That if it can be taken away, it was not mine anyway. It wasn't me. The only thing that can't be taken away is me. And when everything's gone except you, you see yourself as you are. And you're awake. And then things can come and go, and they have no effect. You can taste the world or not. It doesn't matter anymore. So, Robert in Nevada. Hi, Robert. Stephen and Elaine, would you say that the residue of countless generations of conditioning is also a strong factor in our own direct conditioning, determined by the family and society this body mind is born into? Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Example I use is water, right? When the child is born, the consciousness is undifferentiated. It doesn't know it has a body. It takes a long time to get used to operating this thing, right? But the nervous system, which is the environment, right? It's absolutely one with the environment. In order to survive, which its number one mandate, keep stability to the form, right? It conforms itself to that environment. Just like you put water in a container, it takes the shape of the container. That container can be a fine crystal wine glass, or it can be an old tire in a vacant lot. Doesn't care, just takes the shape of it, and that's what the nervous system does. Later we make the mistake of identifying that as ourselves, and that's where all the problems start. But that container that the nervous system is conforming itself to, that container is old, right? Your parents, but it's their parents and their parents, generation upon generation. The culture that we're in, the religious, the societal, the political, the economic, all of these things make up this container in which the nervous system has to fit in and survive. And it does it. It does it extremely well. So well that it gets stuck there. Right? And what gets it stuck there is consciousness, when the pure undifferentiated consciousness of that child has an experience that invokes the sense of separation. If I'm separate, what am I then? Right? Because now the indifferentiated, just I'm everything, which isn't even a thought at this point, is suddenly it's broken up. There's me and something else. And at that moment, consciousness identifies the me as the body, which in itself is nothing but the nervous system which has conformed itself to a container. So now I am this container. I am this form. And that lasts entire lifetime unless the light dawns. Unless you hear the Dharma and wait, right. Yeah, that's right. I could have been any container, right? Same water, any container. So there's nothing special about your particular conditioning, right? And there's nothing fixed about it. It was arbitrary. The same child born into a poor family in Pakistan would become the poor child in Pakistan. The same one born into an extremely wealthy family out in the Hamptons or something would have become that. Right? So the identity that gets assumed is totally arbitrary, right? That is, it is completely conditioning. There's no truth in it whatsoever. Right? And that's why the entire thing is a fiction. And you can dismiss the entire thing. And just realizing that me, born into a different culture, I would have been completely different. Right? And I still would have thought it was me. Opens up, can turn on the light. Oh, then none of this is me. None of this is really me. I'm what? At that point, all forms can just start to fall away. Right? If I can be anything, same thing, the idea of reincarnation. I have this life and this life. Hold on. What's been going from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, from form to form? Something formless has gone from form to form. So I hope that answers it for you. But the entire structure of the sense of identity is conditioning. And it's just thought, emotion, and sensation have conditioned themselves into a pattern which consciousness then misidentified as a self. It's not a self. It's just conditioned energy. So, hope that covers it for you. I'm sure you'll let me know if it didn't. Jeff, hey Jeff, good to see you. Hello Sarah, good to see you. Jay says, people probably asked you this before. Yes, it's been a while. Yes, they have. But how do you go about your day, G? How are your daily activities and interactions? Do you ponder any particular feelings or thoughts for a while? No, not particularly. I have things I have to do. I try to look for different ways of doing them that are more efficient. But there's always a part of me that is... how's this? What's happening with the sound? Oh my goodness. Hold on a second. No wonder I had to turn it up so loud. Oh, come on, Mike. Probably turn it down a bit now. If you're hearing that screaming behind me, it's not a person. It's a parrot. There's a parrot and a cockatoo that live in the house, and so anyway, where was I? Ah, yes. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of flow with the day, right? Stuff that has to be done. But there's always an awareness of the self. There's always an awareness of being, right? I live in the background, not in the foreground. I live in presence, not in experience. So there's always an awareness of the experiencer, and that's me. And I do take time to just ponder that deeply, to just be with nothing but that, just like I was with you guys, to just be pure being. And to notice the conditioned patterns, right? I'm certainly not free of those. And I think people who had heavily abused childhoods, like I did, a lot of that residue will be there probably to the day this body is no more, this form is no more. And and sometimes there's sadness and nostalgia. One of my most dear friends from when I was young, played in bands together and everything, reconnected recently. And a lot of nostalgia and a lot of stuff, a lot of very beautiful memories and that sort of thing. But otherwise, on the surface, I don't look any different than anybody else. But the interactions, I'm not... There's no reactivity. So when I'm reacting to someone, it's not my conditioning that's reacting. I'm just seeing people as they are. I'm responding to people as they are. I'm sensing them as they are, and it's rare to find somebody who's not lovable, right? If you can see through the facade. Some people on the surface are not. They don't appear to be. And they tend to run for public office. But when you look closely, you can see through the facade of the conditioning. You realize it is just conditioning. So I talk to people, I talk to consciousness. I mean, who else is going to hear me? The body's not going to hear me, right? The eardrum doesn't hear me, right? The brain doesn't hear me. You do, right? So I talk to you, that which is beyond the body. So, daily activities and interactions. I mean, it's hard to describe. I just kind of go through my day just like anybody else. And, I'm not particularly organized. I'm not good at that. So a lot of stuff I have to get done. It's not easy for me to do. Even when I was in the world of business and doing computers and things like that, it wasn't because I was a great businessman or organizer. I was terrible at it. I was just extremely good at a few things, right? The stuff that not a lot of other people were good at. So I had my own little niche there. But I wasn't particularly functional. I couldn't run a team. I couldn't manage. I couldn't do any of that stuff. I just create stuff. That's all I could do. So it's not like there's some, special, this particular form does what it does well, which is right now just sit around and talk to people about this. Unfortunately, that's what I like to do. So it all kind of works out in the end. So I hope that answers it for you. I know it's really vague because it's kind of, I don't know. Do you ponder on any particular feelings or thoughts for a while? Not as a trying to figure something out. Something catches my attention. Like I was, for about an hour and a half, I was just sitting on the rocks up in the mountains today, just taking in the vista, just overwhelmed by it, by the magnitude of it and the beauty of it, and how such a thing could possibly come to be, and the incredible miraculous gift of being able to be the eyes that see that beauty, and the like. And some things I do ponder about, these. But even, about even ideas for teaching, they come just very spontaneously. I don't really develop them at all. If I have an idea for a video, I don't write it down. I just turn on the camera. The idea came. If it's coming, it's going to keep coming. If it doesn't, well, I don't have a video. I don't put anything out. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. So I hope that helps. Yeah. Ava, gee, your explanation about greed, very illuminating. First time now I have realized it is not only greed, as this word is proper. Yes, as it is popularly understood. Great insight indeed. Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank the Buddha, because that's where I realized it. I mean, he had no problem with desire. Is always credited. He said it's delusional to have a desire for something that doesn't exist. So the desire for happiness is absolutely real for all of us, right? But it doesn't exist in any object. Therefore, the desire, seeking happiness in an object is delusional, right? It's never going to be fulfilled. And that's what greed is. Greed is simply the idea that my sense of well-being is attained, right? And that's why people amass enormous wealth. Why? Because they're trying to find happiness. They get rewards, they get pats on the back, their egos are flattered up one side and down the other. They see themselves as being exceptional. They see themselves as they did this all on their own. Totally delusional. And yet it doesn't stop. It just keeps going. Why? Because whatever it is they're really reaching for can't be satisfied. And it doesn't matter how much you amass. It's just not going to be satisfied. That's the fundamental illusion. And so greed can be reduced to something very, very simple. Every time I think I need something to be happy, that's greed. Brinso, are there still moments in your life where you catch you lying to yourself or creating self-deceptions? And if so, you got any tips? Thanks, GP, if you get to this. Um, no. Lying, no. Uh, Do I have any tips? Know yourself. Right? If you know yourself, a lie if a lie comes up, you're going to spot it as a lie, right? If you spot yourself, if you do spot yourself lying to yourself, that's good news, because it means you've already outgrown it so that you can see it, right? Now, sometimes those, what we call lying to ourselves, they're habits, behavioral patterns that aren't easy to let go of, even things like addictions and the like. People can still have addictions and not be lying to themselves anymore. They're on the way out of it, once you see what it actually is. So the lying is, people don't really lie to themselves. They're self-deceived. Once somebody sees something is true or false, they don't cling to it. You can't, right? Nobody purposefully holds on to something they know isn't true, right? Now, there can be times when you see something isn't true, but the momentum of behavior is so strong that the behavior perpetuates itself, maybe for a while. But that's not the same as lying. You're just stuck in a web, and it's going to take you a while to extricate yourself from all of the momentum that's going in so many different directions, with so much energy behind it, right? We invest a lot of our lives into certain behaviors. When we recognize that those behaviors are hurting us, they still have a momentum about them. If you take the time, and don't beat yourself up about that stuff, to just explore the depth of it, you'll always find that those kinds of things that we're lying, quote unquote, lying ourselves about, are actually deep wounds. They're nothing to be condemned. They deserve compassion, they deserve understanding, they deserve tenderness, they deserve heart and openness and love to help dig up and alleviate the underlying pain that is giving rise to that behavior. And that's how you can see our politicians. America is probably the most corrupt country that's ever existed. It was also the most potential. It was the wealthiest, and of course, it's become the most corrupt. There's almost nothing said by any politician that's true. It's all a lie, because we're not a democracy anymore. It's the donor class. They work for their donors, not for the people, right? So now, what is it that motivates somebody like that? Right? If you dig through it, it's very, very fragile. The politicians are very, very fragile, right? Because they're not even the power people, right? They're not the ones that have the power. They're completely at the mercy of their donors. Right? They're little slaves, really. So they've sold themselves out. They're lying to themselves, right? They're trying to build their own delusion of who they might be. But every single one of them, it's not hard to see the total rejection Donald Trump got from his father. It's all written all over him. You can see the kind of abuse that he suffered as a child that created that conditioning, that he got enough positive feedback for, that it continues. And there's very little that will change that. But if you understand that these are children in men's bodies, some women's bodies too. Nancy Pelosi's no better. These are children in adult bodies. They're not really grown-ups. They're not really functioning adult human beings. They are wounded children that are acting out. If you can see that, the enormous amount of compassion can go even for them. You can even understand how they could put children in cages and have no sense of conscience about it. It's fine. I mean, I even looked at some comments on Facebook that just appalled me. People just, yeah, well, they broke the law, they deserve it. It's like, what? I mean, you have to be hurt really badly to be able to have that kind of, be that cold. So it's not lying, it's delusion. There's a difference, right? And I'm not deluded. Well, I don't think I am. Right? It's never wise to say, no. It's never wise to say that. I can, I haven't spotted one in a while. Let's put it that way. Mary says, I have the same problem with the resistance you're talking about. So GP, is resistance a learned behavior? Yes and no. It is a natural phenomena in that when the nervous system gets in a particular pattern, it wants to stay in that pattern, right? Because remember, the nervous system conditions itself to the environment, right? It does a really good job. So, to what end? To keep itself safe. So now I'm safe, right? As long as nothing changes, right? So when you start introducing change into the system, which is inevitable because consciousness wants to expand and grow, that is felt as a threat to the environment, to the more primitive part of you, right? The more instinctual part of you, right? And therefore it resists it, right? It doesn't want things to change. So that's not learned. That's natural. That's simply the way it is. Every organism is like that. It's just the nature of wanting to perpetuate that form. Every life form has that mandate, right? Now, as that develops over time, that resistance gets the ego steps in, and the ego, being connected to this whole system, a threat to the ego, is felt as if it's a threat to one's actual person, to our safety. We're not going to survive when the ego is threatened, right? And so the ego has all sorts of learned techniques for resisting, manipulating, avoiding, all sorts of different things. So manifest, right, on a more psychic level, on this level, there's learned behaviors that are resistant. But on the lower level, it's not. It's actually the function of the nervous system, which is why just trying to do self-help on it doesn't work. You have to work with that mechanism, creating the environment of safety that it can then conform itself to. Trying to change it is a waste of time because it detects that as something it needs to resist, because it resists change. So you want it to change, it's a losing battle. So you have to, recognizing its nature, you create an environment that it doesn't have to resist. And then it conforms itself, because that's its nature to do. It's an adaptive system, and it just simply conforms itself to whatever you put in. Whatever you pour the water in, that's the shape it takes. Water and cartoon cats always take the shape of the container you put them in. The resistance that I feel creates a feeling that I am not good or worthy, or I am a phony. That's added on. When you see that resistance is just simply the system wanting to maintain itself, but then a sense of self, an ego develops that's trying to be good and spiritual. It labels resistance as being something bad, as if it, as if it wasn't a natural behavior, right? And then starts saying, well, I can't deal with it, so I'm not good enough, right? But now those things, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm a phony, are very, very fundamental beliefs that go all the way back to that first sense of self when you start identifying with the body. When you, as a child, run into any kind of disfavor from your parents. It could be a mild diminishment. It can be being ignored, or it can be abusive, right? Terribly, physically, sexually, emotionally abusive, right? It doesn't matter. There's just different extremes. But what happens is the child's natural behavior is not acceptable to the tribe. So what you are isn't acceptable, right? That's an existential crisis, right? So all of a sudden, you can't be yourself to survive in the environment in which you are. The nervous system has to compensate for that. It has to become something to survive, and that's where all the suppression comes from, of our behaviors and the like. And then over time, it in order to keep that in place, I mean, the ego evolves as a means of keeping all of this stuff in place. Keeping, the best way to make sure you conform to the environment is, I am that. If I am that, this is what I am, this is what I'm not. I mean, it's the perfect way to suppress. I'm this, I am not that, boom, done, end of story. But it has to explain why it's like this. Well, obviously, mommy and daddy did this to me because I'm not enough. It can't grasp the idea that they can't love, that they're robots, that they're conditioned, that that there's stuff going on, that they're wrong, that they can't see you. That can't occur to you. I mean, you're not there, right? They're gods, right? They're always right. Me good, me bad, God good. I mean, it's the Garden of Eden, right? I was ashamed and hid myself from you, right? So the explanation is, I'm not there. Obviously, they're perfect. Must be something wrong with me. And that is an energetic assumption that gets laid into the nervous system. And then later, you feel like a phony because you are. You're not being you. You can't. There's this whole mechanism keeping you from being you. But you cannot be what you're not. Right? You can only be what you are. And so you can't get rid of it. Right? So it just keeps popping out and popping out. And you have to create the environment. See, it was the environment that created that in the first, that energetic assumption. Everything went along with it. It doesn't do any good to try to fix what's inside the cup, right? You got to change the cup. You change the cup, all of this other stuff will begin to just kind of come to the surface and basically heal itself. That's the whole thinking behind inner reconciliation. My whole course on that. I explain all of this stuff in detail. So it's not that you don't feel like you're not good enough or don't feel worthy. You aren't. As far as this energy is concerned, I'm not worthy. That's why this happened. I'm not worthy. It's conviction, right? It's not just feeling. There's an energetic assumption under there, and that's what we get to in reconciliation. Actually, providing the space that that energetic assumption can come to the surface, and you can finally be free of it, because it's not actually true. It was a conclusion drawn at a time when no other conclusion could be drawn. And remember, I call them energetic assumptions because they're not conceptual, right? These things are put in place before you even have language. Right? It's energetic. The nervous system itself is drawing a conclusion, right? Without words, without intellect. John says, "Brilliant, GP. Many thanks. You're very welcome." Robert, I had the same resistance come off often. Mostly when I try to stop it, it gets stronger. To stop, it gets stronger. You mentioned to allow. Would this be part of the mind keeping us safe? Yes, resistance is always trying to protect what is, right? It does not want to become what isn't. So if you fight with it, right, you create a conflict with it, the resistance will get stronger, right? It's digging its heels in, and it's way better at this game than you are, right? So what is the one thing in the universe for which there is no defense, no need for a defense, and there's no resistance to it? One thing, the whole universe. Love. Simple. The rejection you received as a child, turn it around, you give that very same energy in you acceptance, pure acceptance, no agenda, not even the desire to change it, no fixing, no nothing. Just whatever you are, you're okay. And what happens? What? This I'm in fighting stance, and you're going, it's okay, I love you. What? And you'll see this little energetic thing going on inside you. What? What? It's not expecting that. Suddenly it's like, really? And all of a sudden this little kid starts coming out. Really? The walls start coming down. All of a sudden all sorts of wonderful things begin to appear. Right? So that's why I call it allowing. I call it the yoga of allowing. You're taking the position, the asana of the peacemaker. To just, whatever comes up is okay. The whole idea, I haven't written about it in 5 years, but I mean, around the law of attraction time, I mean, I was kind of the black knight of law of attraction. It's like, no, there is no such thing as a negative emotion. Get rid of that idea. People are fighting, I got these bad ideas, these bad thoughts, and these bad feelings, I got to get rid of them and raise my vibration, right? Which, of course, nobody could do because you're fighting it. I said, there is no such thing as that. There's only natural thoughts that got bad press. We've interpreted them. We've said they're negative thoughts, but that's part of the suppression mechanism, trying to keep parts of us at bay. There's no such thing as a negative thought. It doesn't exist. There's only thoughts. There's only feelings. There's no such thing as a negative feeling. If you take that position and you let yourself feel whatever you're feeling, no matter how uncomfortable it is, you'll notice how your mind wants to run away from it. You'll notice how the habitual energy wants to suppress it. But if you stay right there and don't, and completely accept it, and don't follow the unconscious programming that's been running away from it for decades, this most magnificent transformation will begin to take place. And really, all it is you're giving yourself love. It's actually so simple, it's mind-blowing. You're simply giving yourself what you didn't get in the first place. And if you had, none of this stuff would have happened. But it did. It's inevitable that it does, really. So now you do it. You give yourself that same self-acceptance, total unconditional love. Everything is fine. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. Everything is functioning exactly the way it should be. And I just love you, whatever comes up. Just even as I'm saying that, notice the shift in the internal environment in you. Because it's not heard that. It's even self-help is got to fix you, right? As good intentioned as it is, we're going to fix you. We know what to do. We're going to go, we're going to fix this, we're going to change this, we're going to raise this vibration, right? How does the nervous system, what does your nervous system do to that? I mean, it's so much better at this game than you are. It can smell an agenda a mile away. So, I guess Guru shouldn't be flipping off but well, there you have it. Anyway, did that answer it for you, Robert? Hope so. Brenzo. Talking to Mary. I think not feeling enough or phony may not be linked to resistance. For me, I've found not feeling enough to be linked to an imagination of what I should be like. Yes. Well, of course, that's where it came from. Or what the probably continued right way to be is. Yes. Well, that's what happens, right? As I described how it happens, right? I mean, this is why I'm supposed to be. That's the container, right? That I have to conform to. I'm supposed to be like this. Of course, I'm not like that. That's the problem, right? I mean, it was certainly in my case, the container I was supposed to conform to bore no resemblance to me whatsoever. I mean, it was just the most uncomfortable thing oh my God, forever. And that's what happens. We take that on ourselves. Oh, I should be like this. And even when we become spiritual, oh, I should be spiritual. I shouldn't be so reactive. I should be more kind. I should be more compassionate. Right? Suddenly, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. It's the same thing over and over and over again. The mind cannot accept the simple, self-evident truth. You are enough right now. You don't have to become anything else. There's no list of requirements. There's no board that you have to defend your case to. There's no prerequisites. You are absolutely fine right now. There's nothing wrong with you right now. The one thing we can't accept. I mean, all self-help is based on the fact that you're going to get there someday. Right? Just need a few more of my programs, right? Right? Like 10 or 1,000 more. Right? You're going to get there someday, but not now. Was it Alice in Wonderland? Alice in Wonderland. She was at the tea party with the dormouse, the rabbit, and the Mad Hatter, and she asked the Mad Hatter because they were having tea and crumpets or biscuits, right, or something like that. She says, "Do you have any jam?" He says, "Oh, jam yesterday and jam tomorrow, but no jam today." So that's kind of what this thing goes for. Yes, what you should be is completely made up in the mind. You'll notice that in all the meditations, I invite you to completely set aside all your memories, thoughts of the past, all of that, and also the future, what you want to be, what you aspire to, what you hope to become, all of those things. Set them all aside to just be here and find out if anything's missing right now. There isn't. There is nothing missing right now. The mind is always saying something is missing, but actually nothing is missing. Say, well, it should be like this. And then compares this to that, and now there's this feeling, oh, I've got to get there. And that's the carrot and the donkey, right? The donkey never gets the carrot, right? Jam yesterday, jam tomorrow, no jam today. So that's completely arbitrary and made up. What you should be, or what you're supposed to be, or what life is supposed to be like, right, is all made up. That's all conditioning. That's all the container. Right? What's it supposed to be like? This. How do I know this is what it's supposed to be like? Because this is what's happening. Isn't there a good how to put it? Destiny is what happens. It's so simple. How do I know this is what's supposed to be happening? Because it's happening. Duh. The mind wants, oh no, it's supposed to be something else. Oh, I'm supposed to have more of these. I'm supposed to have more money. I'm supposed to be better looking. I'm supposed to be young. It's like, really? So what we imagine things should be is like, but not what actually is. The only thing I ever experience is what is. I never experience what should be. Just what is. I live a great life if it conforms to that. Let go of all of the should-bes and you will find that life is absolutely stunning and perfect. Right? And you are stunning and perfect and unbelievably magnificent. I love being able to give such good news every week. Every week I'm here just handing out the good news. Let's see. Alessandra, continuing on experiencing two worlds simultaneously. My children experience an insane mother, toxic, narcissistic, codependent, bipolar. Now I see the wounding I created on them, and it aches me to see. Oh, I know the feeling. Yes, I know. But here's how you see through that. The only reason somebody becomes an insane, toxic, narcissistic, codependent, bipolar mother, it's because that's how you were treated. That's what you were taught to be. It's not your nature. It's nobody's nature. That's the container. Your nervous system found a way to survive in that container. And in order to do that, it had to become these characteristics. Nobody's to blame for this. Nobody created it. Some of the behaviors that I acquired because I had an insane mother, right, were insane, right? So many parts of me were so crippled that I couldn't function. And there's certain things I still can't do. I just can't do. I'm amazed at people who are really easily functional in life. For me, it's not. It's not. I have to keep things very simple. Right? I can't deal with a lot of complexity. I keep my decisions very low. If you look at my wardrobe, I don't make elaborate decisions about stuff. I keep everything very, 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 very simple. Right? Different kind of my sister's not like that. She had a very different experience. Though we're 13 years apart in age. So it's not your fault. I remember when my kids were young, and I began to see the effect that my family was having on them. That's when my eyes started to really become open at how that they really were crazy, that it wasn't just eccentric. They were genuinely nuts. My mother and her sister being the most nuts of all. And I just made up my mind it just wasn't going to go any further. And I eventually got them out of Chicago. I took them away, and they lived a completely different life, right? And but I knew I couldn't block all of it. And my son had some really hard times with self-worth and things like that he was eventually able to work through. And we had this conversation, and I told him that I'd done that, and I took the brunt of it. I just wasn't going to let it pass through me. And he just said to me, "Don't worry, Dad, I'll take care of the rest." Sorry. Yeah, there's nothing harder than seeing the effect you have on others when you're in your unconsciousness. When you're not conscious, the damage we do to others. But when we really see that, we really feel the remorse of it, and that heart of compassion begins to open. That remorse is what leads to wisdom. And I don't know any other way for it to happen. If our leaders could actually feel viscerally the incredible cruelty they're inflicting on others, it would stop. But they can't. They can't feel it yet. They're going to have to at some point. That's the suffering. Right? Once we feel the effect we have on somebody, someone we may hurt, and there's nothing we can do about it. Something inside breaks open. To me, that's the real origin of true wisdom. The wisdom that grows out of the heart and not out of the mind. So, be awake now, Alessandra. Be awake now. And that will retroactively adjust energy. Right. It's not too late. Don't worry about it, please. Brenzo and Mary are having a little conversation about what should I be in accepting what I think I covered that in terms of what should and should not. Painful to see who I was and what I did. At the same time, I wasn't able to act sanely. Yes, unable, correct. Experience the two personalities is very intense. Lots of guilt and regret. But the regret, part of what the robot's actions and not yours. And so that guilt and regret are also part of the conditioning and that keep you in place. Remorse is not the same. Genuine remorse is a repentance, right? That word repent is beautiful, the way Christ used it. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm going to change my ways. It's a complete and total shift of perception. That's what repentance was, as he meant it. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near, right? Shift your entire perception, because the kingdom of harmony, beauty, truth, power is here. Right? So don't change your ways and become a better person. That's the behavioral approach. That's the religious approach. The spiritual one, this is a complete 180 of perception. And when you make that 180, you discover the kingdom of heaven has always been here. And you've never been apart from it. And none of this was your doing. Interaction today. Alessandra, how do I forgive myself? Well, I covered it. Do you need more? Yeah. I hadn't read this. How do you forgive yourself? Remember, you guys maybe heard me say this before, the meaning of the word forgive. The word forgive in the Greek, translated Greek, and then Greek finally you're bad, you deserve to be punished, but we're not gonna, because I'm such a nice guy. The meaning of that word, as he used it, meant to be vindicated, to be found innocent. If you really recognize that this was conditioning and not you, you rediscover your not only innocence, but the innocence of your parents, their parents, and the innocence of your children. And that's how you put an end for good to these kinds of family patterns that continue to go. You don't have to get into the future, into the past to do it. Original innocence. You didn't do it. You simply fell into a river that was heading that way and didn't realize you were in it. So, to forgive means to be found not guilty. Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing. So find yourself. And find yourself innocent. And you will find it's that powerful. It's the kingdom of heaven. That's why the essence of innocence, because the sins never belonged to you. They were the Hi, Sophia. What a lovely thing to ask. You come out of that way of functioning first by ending the judgment of yourself. You'll find that the judging of others is simply the ego defending its position. Right? Now, if I get conditioned into a certain pattern, right? That pattern, of course, in my world, my tribe, this is the right way to be, right? So any part of me that wants to be that wants to be something else is not acceptable, right? Then what happens is I see the parts of me I've denied, I see somebody else doing, right? And I have to deny them too, right? Because the reality is I want what they've got. I actually want the freedom to do that. So I have to condemn that, right? That's all fundamentalism is, right? These are a bunch of very, 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 very frustrated people that just condemn everybody in the whole world, right? Because they have nothing that brings them any kind of happiness. I digress. So what it is, the denial in yourself of a part of yourself reflects itself in a judgment of others, even if you don't know what that part is. You'll judge and even not know why, right? Some of the things like people being cruel, it deserves to be called out on. But if you can begin to discern the difference between who they actually are and the behavior they are acting out, the judgment gets less. And when you and between those two, seeing that what I'm really judging mindlessly is really something I'm just suppressing in myself, and I need to embrace that in me, right? And the things that are legitimately should be judged, right? Like there's so many things that these days that need to be judged: the police brutality, endless wars, the distribution of wealth. I mean, there's so many things that need righteous indignation. But if we do that with hatred towards the individuals and not see them as the ignorant, deluded beings they actually are, right? Then all we're going to do is more of this, and it'll be a fight. And then when it becomes a fight like that, it's whoever has the most power, not who has the most wisdom. So the way to do that is to become, first off, completely loving of yourself because of your judging. The feeling to judge comes up, and then what do? You judge you for judging. Same thing, right? If you see that it is just a pattern of behavior, right, that is simply trying to protect you. This is they're wrong, I'm right. It's trying to say the way your limits are legitimate, you should be limited this way, and they should be too, right? And instead just kind of embrace the whole thing. And even embrace the part of you that wants to judge, because that's just conditioning as well. That's just part of the mechanism to keep the suppression in place. So so you don't have to force yourself to not judge people, right? This kind of inner exploration is not behavior modification. I'm not teaching you to be a better person. I'm teaching you to discover the originally beautiful, innocent person you really are, and then that will clear away all of the behaviors that were based on what you were not. And so, again, self-acceptance. Even the judgmental you comes up, go, okay, there's the judge. The judge is trying to protect me from something. The judge wants to keep me in a particular way. If I judge myself, then I won't do the bad things. And that's often happens as a kid. We judge ourselves, right? Oh, I'm bad. I shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. And it keeps us from doing the stuff that gets us hurt, right? So the judge is part of that whole mechanism. Gets stuck in place, right? And the like. And now we don't want to be judging others. Consciousness has awoken. And it's going, there's got to be a better way than this, right? So do to yourself the way you'd like, exactly the way you'd like to be towards them. And that's recognize the judgment comes up. Recognize when judgment does come up, you're not really seeing them anymore. You're seeing your ideas about them that you're judging. And then just turn the attention inward. to recognize that you're only judgmental because you were wounded. It's only a reflection of your pain. And the remedy for that, love. Love, 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 love. And what I mean by love is nothing abstract. I mean unconditional love, which is not this grand thing up in the sky. I mean accepting yourself as you are right now. That what you are right now is okay. That's unconditional love. It has no requirements and no prerequisites. There's no standard you have to meet. It's unconditional. Where you are right now, I love you. You're good. All of my courses that I use, tapping and inner reconciliation, are all to get you to that place of simply allowing yourself to be loved. Does that help, Sophia? Volume was better before? What happened? It comes and goes. Pushing it. Nazarene, I'm aware of the idea that seeking is pointless and leads to suffering. However, I notice a part of me is still seeking. Shouldn't my awareness of this have ended the seeking? No. And seeking doesn't end until you find what you're seeking, right? And as long as you think what you're seeking is outside of you, the seeking will continue. We get the idea that, seeking is pointless. I'm going to stop seeking now. And then, no, that's more of the same, right? That's attempting to manipulate things. The seeker is an absolutely essential phase everybody goes through. You have to. If you don't start seeking, none of this stuff will unfold to you, right? So the seeker's not a problem, right? But the seeker is an energy of seeking, and you can notice that sometimes, I even feel it sometimes, the seeking is like, well, seek what? Right? So there's some habit, but lighten up, right? Lighten up. This isn't seeking's pointless. I got to stop seeking, right? What good is that going to do, right? Right? Right. I mean, you're kind of digging it. It's not like that. You just notice a part of you is seeking, right? Do you know who you are? If not, then you're still seeking, and it's okay. My job is to make sure that the seeking is pointed in the right direction. That what you are seeking is the one who is watching the seeking. I noticed a part of me is still seeking. Who's that I? I want to know who that I is. I want to speak to that I. The one that's witnessing the seeking. Is that seeking? Or is that the sought? The seeking stops when you know when you know the one who has been watching the seeker and the seeking. And that one is you. You've been seeking you. The mistake of seeking is this idea that it's out there somewhere. Even the idea of enlightenment, right? This thing I'm seeking. Right? But the cosmic joke is that both the seeker and the seeking have been being watched by the sought. Follow the I. Follow the I sense. There's something watching the seeking. What's that? Now, if the seeking turns towards that, there's nothing wrong with that seeking. That's a completely different thing. It's not trying to get something, it's trying to know itself. The origin of the seeking. So, does that help? Certainly take a little bit of the weight off. Gotta stop seeking. Gotta stop seeking. People do that. My God, people do crazy things. Sarah, hello G. In 2017, I had bone spurs like the Donald, and was going to remove them with ultrasound again. I did a meditation of yours, and they disappeared and never came back. What happened? Well, I love hearing these things. You know, when long time ago, 50 years ago almost now, uh, when this stuff started to become clear to me, I practiced metaphysical healing, and the object was to bring about physical healings. That became actually burdensome, though, which is why I stopped doing it and I moved off in a different direction. But the body isn't what we think it is. It's not a solid thing. It's a flow of energy. And therefore, the various functions of the body are various flows of energy. A bone spur represents a particular energy form. Every structure of the body is, in fact, an object of consciousness. And therefore, it's a particular mode of consciousness that sustains it. If that consciousness shifts, the manifestation of the consciousness, which is what we see as the body and the world around us, also shifts. And it could be quite dramatic. It can be things that aren't supposed to change. I've seen some really miraculous things happen. And there's even a couple of religions, I mean the New Thought religions, Christian Science, Unity, and Science of Mind, that focus on it. I'm bringing about physical healings, practitioners and things like that. And I practiced those way back when. And it was real. It works. It doesn't reveal who you are, which is why I had to keep going, right? I couldn't stop there. There was still a gap between God and myself that had to be sealed up. But the body is what you think it is, nothing more. The body is like the world. It doesn't exist outside of your perception. Now that's a big one for people to grasp. Right? But what you actually experience as your body, right, is a flow of what we call sensation. It's a kind of experience, isn't it? You can feel this different kinds of energies, right? We call that the body, and we believe that there's this physical body in the world that we are experiencing through the senses. But the experience that we call sensation, right, is all you ever experience. You never experience the body. The body's an assumption. The experience of what we call sensation is not an assumption. Yeah, I'm experiencing that. And I believe that there's a body and a world out there that is causing this experience. I now know it isn't. That is simply arising spontaneously in consciousness, and there is no body and there is no world. Therefore, the body, when it's seen as it actually is completely malleable. It's a thought, which means it can shift forms as quickly as a thought does. And so the bone spur doesn't exist as a thing. There's only the thought of bone spur. Now, you can actually approach it metaphysically. That is how you approach, by seeing it is just a thought and eradicating the thought. But in this case, that wasn't the process you went through. You simply did one of my meditations, which is imbued with that because I've done this stuff for 50 years. But mostly what it was is it created a shift in the inner environment, that whatever it was that was the more invisible influence that was forming those disappeared, and as a result, the shape that was maintained by the invisible force just kind of returned to its natural shape. That's how it works. It's very subtle, and I don't talk about it a lot because, I stopped doing it because people just wanted me to get fixed. Nobody was interested in in knowing the truth. Fix me, heal me, right? Nobody wanted to know. It's like everybody wants heaven, but nobody wants to know God, right? Sorry, it's one is the result of the other. I'm sorry, you don't get just the fruit. You got to take care of the tree. So, let's see, Sarah. Does that explain it for you, Sarah? It's pretty amazing when you realize that the only thing we ever experience are images in the mind. But if you realize it's an image in the mind, there's absolutely no obstacle between you and healing anything. It's our beliefs that make the wall, and there are no walls. David Lane says, thanks for your... Oh, I just lost it. Where'd you go? Ah, there it is. Thanks for your answer, GP. Great. Thank you, David Lane. David, couldn't agree more. I feel that school does a lot of harm. Conformity, obedience, low self-esteem. I hated it. Hope that someday we will evolve to a level of consciousness beyond schooling. We will. You can tell that we will because we don't just automatically go to the new advanced state. It has to happen first is everything has to crumble around us. And the crumbling we're seeing now is not a minor one. This is epochal. What we're seeing, if I can wax prophetic a bit, isn't just a cultural shift. It is a cultural dissolution. And I'm not just talking about Asian culture or Western culture or American culture or German culture or anything like that. I'm talking about the whole thing. Right? A complete shift that created all cultures happened when we went from hunter-gatherers to agriculture, about 12,000 years ago. Right? And all of this has evolved from that shift. Property and ownership, all of these very fundamental ideas that we don't even think about anymore are kind of the mainstay of all of this. So this entire 12,000 years has been based on a particular model. That model is what's falling apart. It's not a tweak to the model. The model is gone because it was completely based on the idea of scarcity. Right? We were conserving food, right? We could actually store food. That's huge, right? From the hunter-gatherers, which just kind of the day. There was still this dependence. So we're in this place where we actually have completely removed ourselves from the need for anybody or anything on the planet to go without. That we have everything we need for an absolute, utter utopia, right? Except our minds are still, right? It's like we're still getting text messages from the caves. Right? And so the whole culture has been based on this model of scarcity. It's crumbling. So this is why we're not just going to have another new government that is more benevolent, right? The whole thing's collapsing. The bulldozers are raising the ground. And schooling is part of that, the politics, the economics, the system, banking, all of it. And all of it is coming crashing down. Christ even said it, no stone shall be set upon another that shall not be torn down. He was talking about the entire structure of human thinking is going through this, a cocoon-like transformation. The caterpillar is becoming a butterfly, but it has no clue what a butterfly is. Daniel, hey GP, an interesting exercise is look at something and pay attention to that which is seeing immediately, body, mind calms down. Yes. The moment our attention goes away from what we're looking at to where we're looking from, even though attention can't actually see where we're looking from, but the attempt to do that, it's unbelievable the amount of stuff that it will heal, the stuff that it will just begin to dissipate, because your attention, the closer your attention goes to you, the more powerful everything it becomes. The more powerful the energetic effect running through the entire system. And until you get to that threshold beyond which attention cannot go any further, because you can't see yourself. You cannot turn your attention on yourself because you are one. And you can only turn your attention on other. You cannot turn it on self. So you find a different way of knowing yourself. You are And you are the knowing that you are. But that knowing is not objective knowledge. You just are, and you know it. Greetings. Hey, Kamal. Good to see you. Brenzo, thank you for your insights on self-deceptions. Extremely insightful, especially when contrasted with practical examples. And the Donald Trump example, spot on. Politics aside. Yes. Yes, and in a highly, highly traumatized and willfully ignorant and deluded country that would allow somebody that has absolutely no self-awareness or moral character to be put in front of weapons of mass destruction. It shows exactly how completely lost this country actually is. Most of the West is actually. They're all headed in this direction. It's ignorance, delusion, and greed. You see that? You'll see it everywhere. That's why Buddha called it the three poisons. David, totally agree with your analysis of the U.S. political system and those that rule. Good. It's politics day here at Satsang. Brenza chuckled with how you ended the topic. Wondered how you wrap up that one. Much love for the honesty. You're welcome. Thanks, G. I figured you were pretty easy going. Goodbye. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing much bothers me these days. Yeah, which is a very nice. It's the best sign I can point to for people on their spiritual journey is not what you know, insights you've had. It's how reactive are you? Do things just kind of pass through you? If you are, then your insights are sinking in. Yeah. Because that's where peace is, right? It's in the non-reactivity. And it means that it doesn't mean that you're not reactive simply for lack of opportunity, right? You're still engaged in life. You're not reactive because the triggers aren't there anymore. Right? The thing that sustained the reactivity is just gone. It's kind of gone into abeyance. Mary, may I ask your ideas for my friend Barb about OCD, negative recurring thoughts? Sure. Sure, you can ask, and I'll even answer. It's important, and you guys hear me say this over and over and over again, because I have to, right? No matter what the particular malady is, the particular emotional distortion, mental distortion, recurring pattern, OCD, hoarding, all sorts of different characteristics. They are all the result of the nervous system attempting to survive in a particular environment, and that's the way it found to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. It means it's functioning perfectly. It found a way. If it could have found a better way, it would have. It didn't choose these ways. It didn't choose the most miserable way it possibly could. It chose the way that worked. It's the best thing to keep you safe and give you the most safety possible. Right? And OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's just a highly ritualized way of being, right? And thoughts are recurring. Now, when I say that this is just what the energy did, hopefully you can feel the sense of forgiveness. You're innocent. You haven't done anything wrong. This is simply the way the nervous system got programmed. So now you can begin to have compassion for the system that's stuck in this position, that still thinks this is necessary. So it means that energy still believes it's in that container. Nobody's told it the war's over. Now, when you have the recurring thoughts and you start fighting with them, what does that do? It sends the message. You're not good. It's telling the container's still here, right? You're going to have to stay with it. Just simply give yourself permission to be with those thoughts. Say yes to them. I know it's exactly the opposite of what you want to do. You want them to go away. Well, you've tried that, hasn't worked. So try my way for just for the heck of it. Right? You have recurring thoughts. You notice the recurring thoughts. There's a recurring thought, but give no story to it. No story whatsoever. Shouldn't be there. Should be there. It's a problem. I got OCD. Even the label OCD is after the fact. It's somebody who's made stuff up and put it into the DSM-5. I think they're up to 5 now, right? Because they like to actually name things and then they can study it and the like. So even put aside the name OCD, because that's got all sorts of overhead on it, isn't it? That doesn't exist. Somebody made that up. What's actually happening? Thoughts keep recurring that you don't really want to have, right? Okay, so now, all right, so this is my circumstance right now. I have thoughts that are recurring, and I don't really want to have them. But I don't really want to have them is also a thought. And that keeps recurring too, doesn't it? With every recurring thought, there's also the recurring thought, which you didn't notice before, which is, I don't want to have these thoughts, right? Oh, that's also a recurring thought. Well, isn't that interesting? Now, where are you in all of this? Are you in the thought? Or are you the one watching the thought? And if all of those thoughts just suddenly stopped, wouldn't you still be you who now noticed that they stopped? So which is more important? Which is more fundamental? The thoughts or you? You're not a thought. You're not recurring. You just always are. The background. Those thoughts couldn't exist without you. So we don't have to worry about where they came from, what they're about. Even somebody who happens to say that it's OCD and it's a problem. That's another thought. A recurring thought, isn't it? I got this. I want to get rid of them. It's a problem. They're all recurring thoughts, right? You know, it's reduce it to the level of, you know, we've all had the experience of getting songs stuck in our head and you can't get them out, you know. After watching Frozen 1 and Frozen 2 about 1,000 times each with my granddaughter, there were songs that they were nice the first 100 times I heard them. And now I can't get this out of my head, you know. Let it go, let it go. I mean, oh no, right? And I didn't want it. And I just kind of laughed at it. Oh, there it is again, right? It's just, now notice, I didn't turn it into something. It's when we label things and we put in the DSM-5. Oh, it's a thing now, right? No, what's your actual experience? A thought comes, not a pleasant thought. Right? A pleasant thought isn't coming. Then there's another thought that says, I really don't like this thought. And then another thought that says, I got to get rid of this thought. Another thought says, oh, this is OCD, this is terrible, right? They're all thoughts. They're all the recurring thoughts. And where are you? Are you in the thoughts? Are you watching the thoughts? Are you in the movie? Are you sitting in the audience eating popcorn? Know your right position, and no thought will touch you. They just whiz through. Oh, look, that thought was a lot like that thought. Look at that. And that's all the meaning it'll have. So let me know if that's helpful for Barb. I love so much to listen to your GP, Sophia. Oh, thank you, Sophia. Mary says, oh, Nazrin. Oh, thank you for the donation. Do you have a sound issue? Do I have a sound issue? Let me go all the way down to the bottom. Songworm, lol. Do I have a sound issue again? I'm seeing lights on my box here. Um, Checking. I haven't seen anything pop up on the window that tell me that something's off. Still going through the driver. Okay. It might have gotten soft there for a while. Oh my goodness, I'm at 2 hours and 10 minutes and I'm not even halfway through the queue. Okay. Mary says, fundamental Christianity pushed the container on me. Yes, don't be so hard on him, because that's a container that a lot of people got pushed in and maintain that container, right? That these containers don't make themselves, right? They evolve, right? And people kind of get stuck into them, and it's just, I mean, it's grotesque, but it's the way it is. And I brought that container to all other spiritual teachings. Yeah. Is it any wonder why it feels so difficult to move beyond all the self-imposed issues? Yes. Sound is going buzz really loud. Whoops. Okay. Let me. All right. How about now? Oh boy. Have a sound issue. There it goes. Buzzing. When you move too much, check your mic. Problems hearing you. Buzz. Zzz. Technical difficulties. Boy, I have no idea how much you guys actually heard. Get down to the bottom. You had a faulty wire. Fine now. Okay. I don't know how much you guys actually heard. How far did I get? Oh, hello, Tanya. Good to see you here. Andre, good to see you. GP, can you please explain the difference between mind and intelligence? Mind is simply collections of thought. Mind is not a thing, okay? It's just a pattern of thought. Intelligence is consciousness that can actually look at a thought and assess its quality, right? Something beyond thought has to look at thought and say, good thought, bad thought, useful thought, not useful thought, loving thought, unloving thought. The power of discrimination is intelligence. Right? It's not the ability to retain information. That's a lower form of intelligence. The power of discernment, of discrimination, that's intelligence. Your capacity to know beauty when you see it, right? And be moved by it. That's intelligence. Mind is just thought, right? Intelligence can use mind to give expression to it, just like the artist can mold clay to give expression to their art, to their genius. Thought is like that, right? That's what mind is. Mind is simply a word for pattern of thought. That pattern flowing, we call it thinking. But there's no thinker, right? There's no mind per se. It's not a thing that thinks. It's a word for the flow of thought. Just like the river, the word river is the word for a flow of water. The river's not a thing, right? It's a flow, right? The wind isn't a thing. We say the wind blows, right? Well, there's no wind blowing. There's only the motion of air, right? So this is the way the mind works. It abstracts things into objects which are not objects. The body, right? We refer to the body like it's a thing. It's not a thing. It's a constant flow of cells. 100 trillion of them, to be exact, dying and being reborn constantly. So there's not a thing here. There's only a flow. So the mind is simply a word given to the flow of thoughts. But the way our minds work, we tend to take a word like that, an abstraction, and make it into a thing, an object. And it's not. It's a snapshot. Nothing more. Right? So intelligence is something deeper that can discriminate. Otherwise, the thought, what is it in you that says this thought's useful, this one isn't? This is good, this is bad, this is beautiful, this is not. What is that? That's not a thought. That's influencing thought. That's an invisible power. That's consciousness. That's intelligence is the aspect of self-aware consciousness. Right? Whereas thought is simply like a clay that can take any form whatsoever. And it can be turned into ugliness and greed, or it can be turned into beauty and satsang. Right? Humor emerges from the contrast between GP talking about these beautiful and proud things and the distraction buzzing sound. Oh my God, how long did that buzzing go on? Damn. Nawaf, how are you? My question is, how can I understand the difference between consciousness and the soul? Are they two different things? Or one thing, like a coin with two sides? I am the light at the center, Nazrin. Yes, you are. Well, remember, as I was just saying, the mind is not a thing. The soul is not a thing. Right? Consciousness is not a thing. The way cognitive thinking works, it has to make objects, subject and object. Subject, verb, object. That's the way the language works. So it has to make an object. So we think of the soul as a thing. It's not a thing. It's simply the sense of being. You can think of it as the essence of you, in which case it is synonymous with heart. So soul, I am, Buddha nature, God, consciousness, pure awareness, spirit, truth, reality, they are all different words or names for the same essential entity, the beingness. A lot of people confuse it because they think of I have a personal soul. But if soul is personal, then it's bounded. It's limited, right? And my ideas of being a limited self are true, right? And that's how most people think. They think that I am this entity, and yeah, I'm not the body. I'm going to die, but then there's this ephemeral body, which we call the soul, and that doesn't exist. That's a concept, right? Soul and consciousness. Soul is simply another word for consciousness. It's got a nice flavor to it, like soul music, soul food, right? Something's got soul. It's got a quality and a character to it, but it's not a thing, right? It's a quality, right? Something's got soul, right? Man, he's got soul, right? You can feel the soul in it, right? So it's just kind of that aspect of consciousness, the ultimate, which all aspects collapse into this completely unknowable, invisible. Sometimes call it the light at the center. Light is a good example of it because while light has an infinite shade of color, right? Light in its purest form can't be seen. You have to see a part of it, right? If some of it gets blocked out, well, suddenly there's red. Well, it's all the same light, right? But in its wholeness, it can't be seen. Right? But in its parts, it's art. It's beautiful. I mean, it's everything around you. I mean, it's just extraordinary, right? So being is like that. All the aspects. You can see as soul, as spirit, as truth, as reality, as love. These are all just names of God, basically. God is the indescribable transcendent. Sarah said, yep, that explained it. I did not leave and stayed for the whole enchilada. I did all the programs of Master Art Institute. I'm totally different. I'm most grateful for you, lovely G. Oh, I'm so grateful for you, Sarah. Yes, you did. Yeah, you did. What a transformation you made. It was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen. Just wonderful. Just watching the layers of defense come down and this incredibly beautiful heart emerge. What a joy for me. Tanya, GP, it's good to be with you all live. Thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us. You're so welcome. Tanya's check her out. She's a singer-songwriter. I enjoy listening to her. Noah says, thank you. What do you think this awakening movement, if we can say, will have impact on changing the world to be more peaceful? Do you realistically think it reach a global impact? And when? Well, it already is having a global impact. Look around. For the first time in human history, the entire world is having a common experience. That's not an accident, right? That's because the underpinnings of the awakening is touching everyone, even those who seem so unlikely and seem so dead set against it, and basically are greedy and cruel. So the global impact is already happening. It will be peaceful, but it will not be the same culture. Right? The only way you can actually truly have a unified humanity is when there's no more sense of a separate self. As long as you've got egos, there will be conflict. So what we're seeing is the destruction of the egoic mind. That's what Christ really meant by the end of the world. Right? Yes, that end of the world is going to reflect itself in massive upheaval, massive stuff going on, all sorts of things going on. But that's just what's happening on the surface. Look deeper. Do I know when? No. When will be the time of his coming? That's what the second coming represents, is the realization of the true self. And when Christ was asked that very question, he says, so what will be the signs, and when are you going to come? Right? And that's what it's referring to. It's not referring to a person. It's referring to this realization, the realization that you and I are experiencing right here, right now. This is what he's talking about. And he said, nobody knows when it's going to come, right? Because it's not in time. It is not an event in time. It's the end of time. So you can't say when, because the calendar's gone. That's the real meaning behind the Mayan calendar ending. It wasn't a special day, and everything's going to fall apart and they make movies about it. It represented that this is the end of this epoch. Right? And what's happening next? All bets are off. Right? We have to show up not knowing. Like the caterpillar climbs into that cocoon and they have no idea, no concept of flight, of that kind of beauty, of that kind of freedom, lightness. It's just a little thing crawling around, can barely see, just chewing on anything green, hoping nothing eats him. Right? Having no idea what it's about to become. It just feels like it's dying. Right? That's the metaphor. That is consciousness leaving breadcrumbs for us, telling us, pay attention. This is what's happening to you. Andre says, my biggest problem is taking action when action is needed without listening to condition. I don't know what to say, like amnesia. It's okay, buddy. Happened to me too. There were times when I just feel the energy. I'd be in some situation and my conditioning couldn't deal with it because I was stuck in the conditioning. And of course, conditioning can only deal with what's in the container. When it runs into something outside of the container, it becomes a deaf mute. It doesn't know what to do. And I remember, this is probably what it felt like, right? It's almost like the energy just completely drains out of you. It's like you don't even know what you think. You don't have an opinion. It's like you're not even there, right? All of your strength is gone. All of your presence is gone. This is a good thing. This means you've hit the edge of the container, right? And the only way something's going to happen after that is something spontaneously arises because the container is no longer capable of providing you with what you need. Believe me, the nervous system notices that. Go, whoa. And it's going to start trying to do this. It's a good thing. Don't worry about it. I'm speeding up a little bit because I don't know why I keep saying it should be 2 hours. I'm the only one here. I can make it 10 if I want. I go, 2 hours, we got to keep it. Who said it was 2 hours? All right, whatever. Um, let's see. Sorry about the sound earlier, guys. I have no idea what happened. Damn. I'll figure out what it is and I'll try to edit it out of YouTube. Hopefully you all got what you needed. Let's see. Andrew suffered from OCD over 20 years, starting to get pretty fed up. Should be called CDO in alphabetical order. Well, that's definitely an OCD way of saying, no, shouldn't be like that, should be like this, right? It's traditional. I saw Ophiax. I hope my answer and my guidance for Barb also was relevant to you. Andre, J. Krishnamurti says, we are only thoughts. Yes. What you take yourself to be is only a thought. Who you think you are is only a thought, of course, because it's what you think you are. Who you really are isn't a thought, because if it is, who's the thinker? Who's the one to whom the thought is appearing? You're the one to whom the thoughts are appearing. You're not a thought. And you just explore that for yourself. Look for yourself. Are you a thought? Is that which is looking and seeing all thoughts, is that itself a thought? Are you thinking you? Now, what he's talking about is absolutely true. What we normally regard as ourself is a thought within the container. But you're not that thought. You believed yourself to be as that thought outlined, and that's the separate self. That's the sense of I, which is only the I thought. But notice, that which is aware of the thought is that thought. That's you. So the real you isn't a thought. Because if you were a thought, you'd have no sentience whatsoever. These thoughts aren't sentient. They don't think themselves. They're an appearance. It requires consciousness to cognize thought. They're not self-cognizing, and without consciousness, there'd be no thought. To whom? There'd be no universe. To whom would it be? So, you, as you really are not a thought. And everything you think of as you is. So you come to recognize that those thoughts aren't true. That isn't who you are. You're not immortal. You're not a body. You're not just this blob of matter with a mind inside. You're not a form at all. You're not in space. You're not in time. You're never born, and you're never going to die. That only belongs to the realm of thought. It does not belong to the realm of you. You are what is looking. Put all of your attention there, and you will then see yourself as you are. Thought is the observer. No. The thought is the observed. Only a thought cannot observe itself. It has no power of recognition. Cognizance, consciousness alone has the power of cognition, doesn't it? So it's always consciousness that is the observer. It is always consciousness that's being watched, and you are always the one doing the watching. That's self-evident. Is there somebody else in there watching, or is it you? So you are the observer. You're not the thought. You are the conscious entity. You are the truly true being. Tanya said, GP, we heard most of it, didn't last too long. Oh, good. Good. I can't hear it on this side, right? I mean, I'm just kind of broadcasting. I don't hear what you guys are hearing. Okay, let's see. Buzz, just a few short moments. Oh, great. Great. Thank you, Vashani, Tanya. Mary, Andre, GP, the biggest block that I have, the absolute loneliness. If only consciousness is real, then I have no friends or family. What are your thoughts about this? That is Neo-Advaita nonsense. And this is Really important. That comes from the whole school teaching of there's nothing but me, there's only the absolute, nothing exists, nothing's ever happened, no one's here. That's only half true, right? Friends, family, life, the trees, the bugs, your cat, they all exist, just not separate from you. The sun exists, but not as an object in space-time different from you. It is consciousness known. The absolute is recognizing the one in the many. It is not two. It's not one and nothing else. That's the absolutist, right? It is one and many are not two. The nature of love is to love, right? Well, what if it had nothing to love? It wouldn't be love. So it must manifest itself as love. Music must manifest as a song. You can't separate the two. What happens is you recognize friends and family as yourself. And the love is deeper. It's more cherishing. Especially realizing that your moment with this particular form at this particular time is fleeting, which makes it precious, rare, diamond-like, right? Absolutely beautiful beyond imagination. To see everything as separate from you is samsara. And to think that then there's nothing else but me is also samsara. But to recognize that all of it is happening within consciousness is a manifestation of consciousness, and the richness of consciousness is made known in the intimacy of love and friendship. That's nirvana. The famous Advaita statement that Shankara turned around, the statement from the Brahmins that was, the world is an illusion, only Brahma is real. Now, that's the level at which that statement you're talking about came from. And there's a certain school of thought, that's it. Only Brahma is real. Well, Shankara, kind of the father of Advaita as we know it now, I don't know how many thousands of years ago, a long time ago, right? Speaking to those Brahmins, said exactly the same thing. The world is an illusion. Yes, they said, yes. Only Brahman is real. Yes, absolutely. And then he laid the balm on them. Brahman is the world. It's no separation. The world doesn't disappear. You do. The sense of being other goes away. You find that's the illusion. And so love manifests itself in loving. Every relationship becomes God. And God experienced. So you loving family or your lover, right? Right? Is love experiencing itself. So there's no separation there. And no aloneness. I'm glad you brought that up. It's a lot of people have that issue. There's a lot of non-dual teaching out there that is just simply misguided. Yeah. It hasn't hit their hearts yet. That's all. So, don't worry about that block. Love, my friend. Love, 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 love. Just recognize that it's not personal, right? If it feels personal, there'll be the grabbiness. You want to hold on to it, but if it's not personal, it's the nature of being itself. And you can't hold on to it. It has to express itself. So, all right. We're going to let it go now. Thank you all. Oh, I'm so glad that buzz was only a short period of time. Ugh, that would have sucked. So, at any rate, we seem to have had pretty good technology the whole time. I do think there may be a cord here that I'm going to have to replace at some point. I can't, there's like 3 places, and I can't isolate which one it might be. And I don't want to just replace them all because they're expensive to replace it and find out that one was okay. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah. So, lovely. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for making this all possible through your generous donations and your questions and your sincere hearts. It does this whole heart good. Thank you all. Namaste.